Didn't it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back to order. Next item on our agenda is resolution number 2015-1. This is a charter amendment, and yes, that is a new way of numbering the charter resolutions. This is decoupling the enterprise fund debt from the general fund debt. Entertain a motion to approve charter amendment resolution number 20151.
Second.
Mr. Stevenson?
Thank you. As you said, Charter Amendment Resolution 2015-1 is a charter amendment resolution in the City of Salisbury for the purpose of amending Section SC 7-48 of the Charter of the City of Salisbury in order to accomplish four things. One, to exclude from the calculations of the debt limit any outstanding general obligation debt that is from an enterprise fund. Two, to reduce the percentages of accessible valuation of real and personal property against which the debt limit calculation shall be applied. Three, qualify the debt that is subject to the debt limit. And four, clarify that conditionally repayable grants, compensated absences, and capital lease obligations shall not count against the debt limit. Now, I could give you the Lindsay Rader version if you like, but I
Give us the Tom Stevenson.
But that was it. Those are the four items. You just got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if you want
That was the English
to
version.
expand on that, Mr. Cordry's in the audience and he can help us with it.
Okay. I think first things first, Mr. Cordry, if you could come forward and maybe explain a little bit as to, how we got to this discussion, why this is needed now.
Certainly. Good evening. Yes, we evaluated the current debt status when we were looking at the additional debt we were going to take on with the wastewater treatment plant. And we found it necessary to reformulate, and we thought this would be a good approach because the formula to have a debt limit calculated for all funds is awkward. It's easier to have a formula that's contrived just for meeting the needs of the governmental funds. So we excluded the enterprise funds from the debt limit formula, and we reduced by reducing the overall debt or excluding the enterprise funds, which is about 55% of the total debt. We also reduced the capacity by 50%, so that to keep things in balance. So by passing this, it'll allow us going forward to meet the needs of the enterprise funds based on current events. It's hard to prescribe a formula in enterprise funds that looks out far in the future and anticipates the significant capital needs it might have. We can meet the needs of our capital requirements and adjust our fees and revenues accordingly under this type of approach.
Mr. Cordry, can you describe you said that the limit or the potential for debt capacity was reduced in half. Can you explain how that was reduced, the
Yes.
4% to 2%?
Yes, certainly. If you refer to the exhibit, you can see that there's two columns. There's an example of how the debt limit was computed for the FY15 bond issue. And you can see that for real property, currently we use 4% as the amount of available debt that can be calculated on your real property, and then 10% of your personal. And the proposal reduces the 4% to 2% and the 10 to 5%, which is 50%. And you can see that previously that meant the maximum amount of debt we were permitted was $97 million. Now, because we've reduced the capacity factors, we're down to $48 million.
Okay. And then I understand why you would want, and I'm not sure how we ever got to this merged situation, but I can understand why you would want anything that was revenue base to be separate. My question now is there's revenue enterprise funds, water, sewer, stormwater, marina, parking. Are they all now lumped in one, or are each of those separate?
They're separate,
Okay,
and we'll be making debt decisions independent
each independent.
of each other.
Okay.
It's worth pointing out, as I mentioned earlier this morning, or earlier this afternoon, that the city also has a debt policy, and we have the debt policy restricts debt service from exceeding 10% of your budgeted expenditures. So last year we budgeted approximately $33.5 million, so that would be $3,350,000 that debt service can't exceed. We would hit that barrier before ever issuing the amount of debt that this permits.
Yeah.
We're pretty close to that.
Okay.
So we have another restriction that's not being touched in this charter amendment.
So we don't need to change our debt policy.
It's not to say that we would
In the future,
would never
but we don't.
evaluate it based
Right.
on our needs.
Current-
I
current.
just wanted to share with council a reminder that there is another restriction that's in place.
Understood. Any other questions from council? Then I'd like to open the public hearing. Ms. Nichols?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. I have to admit, all the calculations are probably way beyond my capacity to understand. I have a concern. Every year, our revenues go down but we increase our tax rates. Properties are falling in value. We reassess approximately 1/3 every year. I know what the properties are selling for in my neighborhood. It's way, way less than my current appraisal. So the next time I get appraised, which is coming this year, I will appeal and probably take about $40,000 worth of appraised value off my house. Other people are doing the same. So your revenue on property taxes is going to be going down unless you increase the property rate. I went through this, and I'll admit I didn't understand all the pulling this out and revaluing something else. What I did understand was at the end, you're increasing by approximately 2 your ability to borrow. When do you spend this money? Well, look at the difference. One is 13, one is 27 million. Bothers me just is if you increase our borrowing and you borrow more money, you'll increase our debt service. You've got a falling property values. How are you going to be paying this debt service? Is it going to mean increased property tax? We're already paying at a higher rate than Annapolis and most towns in the state of Maryland. So I admit there's a lot I don't understand, but it looks to me like this is an attempt to be able to increase the amount of money that you can borrow. And if that's the case, you're shaking your head no. Maybe that's, I don't understand, I'll admit. But I would be very concerned if that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Stevenson, do you want to address valuation and assessable base trends?
The last report that we received, the property values actually went up slightly. Mr. Cordy, do you know what sector they were in of the three last year? I don't recall, I'm sorry. Property values did go up.
Okay. That's what I thought. And Mr. Cordry, I want to make sure we also address whether or not, this is intended to create new debt service, new debt and new debt service. Would you mind addressing that issue?
As I mentioned earlier, the current restriction of the debt policy would be the restriction that we would hit. This opens the door to let us complete the wastewater treatment plant improvements that are necessary. It's worth noting that the wastewater treatment plant debt that we are going to take on, staff did a tremendous job in getting the best deal I've ever seen. And that the first 8 years, we pay $150,000 on $38 million of debt. No interest is accruing through that period or through the entire term of 20 years. So after the first 8 years, we'll amortize the balance that remains over the next 12. And if you look at it, it levels the debt service for the entire water sewer fund. So we see no spike through that entire period, which is where we had a significant event that occurred to the city, but it wasn't significant financially in terms of, or at least one that we couldn't easily manage. And so I think the credit it goes to MDE for giving us such a great amount of relief for getting through that. But yeah, so this is mainly a vehicle to accomplish what needs to be done to complete the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you. And so, first of all, let's formally close the public hearing. Second of all, I just want to make sure that we address that there's not something else kind of waiting out there, that this will just enable the wastewater treatment plant project to move forward. And that will consume the new debt, and it won't increase rates. This effort won't increase water and sewer rates, even though it would be on that side of the sort of hard line that is being divided now because of the agreement that we have with MDE that Mr. Cordry is bringing up right now. So that's the reasoning behind it, and that's sort of the hard barrier against. I mean, we're filling that void with the wastewater treatment plant, with the zero interest or 0% interest loan coming from the state of Maryland. Anything else to add, gentlemen?
There was one comment in here that might help. About 55% of our total debt was for the wastewater treatment plant and all the related for that fund, water and wastewater. What we're doing here is splitting in half so that the enterprise fund is standing on its own and the general fund is standing on its own. And we're looking at our debt restrictions for the general fund. But rather than leaving without the burden of commingling, if you will, the enterprise fund and the general fund, if we had just left everything else alone and split those out, yes, we would have doubled our borrowing capacity because we would have said, oh, we're not counting this part, and here's our formula for calculating our debt. But we cut those numbers in half. So instead of being able to have 10%, we only get 5, or 4%, we only get 2. So we adjusted in those percentages for what we could borrow so that it actually comes down. The difference you're seeing in the numbers there is because now the general fund borrowing capacity is not reduced by the amount of money that was being paid out to wastewater treatment, because if wastewater treatment is all in there together, then we build up that plant and we have no money left to do any other projects, any other things that come up, anything that occurs, whether it's Main Street or infrastructure projects, public works projects. There wouldn't be any money there because we were going to hit that debt ceiling. So we had to have this conversation anyway, either raise the debt ceiling with all of them commingled, or this solution was to separate them out so that we could see, okay, these are what we're doing with our government funds, our taxpayer property tax generated monies, and this is a self-sustaining enterprise fund operating on its own, so we could kind of see them as separate cost centers, if you will.
That was better than I could have done.
I was gonna say ditto, but I.
That's the theme of the night. All right, any other questions or comments from council?
Oh, I did want to, the comment from the discussion we had earlier about the exclusion of some of the items from the calculation of debt. Those were already in there. I had questions about that as well. It was, they were already not being counted like leases when we lease a car, because you can walk away from that at any time. As I said earlier, we didn't change the recipe for how we're calculating this. We're just writing it down so that it can be consistently duplicated, no matter who's in charge of finance or who's doing the calculation. They have a formula to follow. So this is, a lot of that is just documented. Looks like you're changing a lot of things, but we're not. We're just documenting what's being done in the past.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Mr. Cordry. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of resolution number 2015-1, charter amendment,
Did you
please
close
signify
the
your.
public hearing?
Yes, I did.
I'm sorry.
Please signify your support by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay, next item on our agenda is resolution, also charter amendment, resolution 2015-2. There's also a public hearing. For this item, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Mr. Stevenson?
Thank you. This resolution would amend Charter Section SC 5-1, Article 5 General Powers, to allow contracts for lighting and for water use for periods of no longer than 20 years instead of what is currently referenced in the charter as limited at 3 years. Section SC 5-1 restricts the period that the city may contract to no longer than 3 years. The city needs flexibility to enter into such contracts for periods longer than 3 years for the benefit of the citizens, and the mayor and council are in agreement with this flexibility. The city shall hereafter be allowed to enter into such contracts for periods no longer than 20 years, and to achieve these ends is necessary to amend Section SC 5-1 of the city charter. We believe this is in the best interest of the citizens. If you'll look on line 28 of your packet, it reads contracts. Number 6, contracts. The contract with any corporation, firm, or person for energy and water requirements of the city or part thereof by such means as may be deemed proper, provided that no contract entered into for a longer period than, and we would strike 3 years and add or change the language to 20 years. So this just gives us a longer period of time to enter into a contract for things such as the purchase of electricity.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and open the public hearing? Is there anyone who wishes to comment? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify your support by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Final item on our agenda this evening is ordinance number 2316 for first reading. I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2316.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And I'll let Mr. Tillman explain what this is.
This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury authorizing an amendment of the FY15 general fund budget to authorize Salisbury Police Department to purchase services provided by the predictive policing company, Predpol. The terms of the contract are 1 year at a cost of $15,000. An additional one-time $3,500 setup fee is required for a total cost of $18,500. The contract is automatically renewable annually. However, either party with 30 days' notice may cancel at any time. Basically, we've just got a budget amendment to increase the current surplus available account 01000-469810 by $18,500 and to increase the police department budget by an equivalent amount.
Okay. Chief, anything you'd like to add?
Good evening.
Evening.
I'm assuming that you've all had a chance to look at the documentation that is in support of this particular software program. We've taken a look at a couple of different ones that are out there on the market, and we feel that this one will serve not only the officers, but the citizens of Salisbury very, very well.
And this will be in the budget next year, in your budget next year.
We can place it into the budget, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Tom, did you want to say something?
No.
Other questions, comments?
No, that was my only question, was the annual renewals will be in the budget.
Okay. Minus the $3,500 setup fee.
That's
Right,
correct.
right.
Just the renewal fund.
All right. And hearing no other comments or questions, all those in favor, please signify your support by saying aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Again, Shani, we're prayers with your family. We'll be thinking of you. And we are adjourned. We do have a closed session meeting immediately after this. Well, actually, let's take a 2-minute recess and then we'll come back for the
Oh,
close.
session.